Just a second. Are you really claiming that God exists?
Yes, I am.
You do realize that when you make a positive claim like that, you take on the burden of proof, right?
So I've been told.
Burden of proof? Seriously? If you've heard this expression anywhere outside a courtroom, very likely you are an atheist or a Christian and you've engaged in that sort of dialogue. If you don't believe me, check this out. How about Qualia Soup, one of the better atheist channels on YouTube?
When you choose to make a claim in debate, you give yourself a burden of proof.
And then there's the Atheist Experience with Matt Dillahunty.
The burden of proof is on the claim that there is a God.
So I'm not just making this stuff up. Let's go back to our conversation where it left off.
So, well, I'm willing to bear that burden.
This should be good.
Hold on. I'm willing to shoulder that burden if you're willing to return the favor. I thought you might try to weasel out of it. What favor is that exactly? That you bear your burden of proof first. Oh, please. I have no burden of proof. I've made no positive claims.
You most certainly have.
No. How many times do I have to tell you? I simply lack belief in God.
Lack of belief in God? Since when is that atheism? That's an intellectual position worthy of a rusty nail or a broken flower pot.
What are you talking about? That's not what I was referring to. It wasn't? Of course not. I was referring to the positive claim that you made just a second ago. What was that now? You made the positive claim that positive claims require bearing the burden of proof. So naturally, you're willing to prove that, right? Say what? You said that by making a positive claim, it entails bearing the burden of proof. Now that in itself is a positive claim. Hugh, I challenge you to provide a proof for it. Seriously. You haven't even established the existence of this so-called burden of proof. But you made the positive claim that it exists. An exercise of faith, I suppose. All right. You might have escaped the burden of it somehow. But surely, you feel the weight of constantly leaning on a God for whom existence is unproven. I don't know. We have no proof that other minds exist. But it doesn't stop us from having this interesting conversation. The existence of other minds, it's a pragmatic necessity. Sure. And the existence of God is an ontological necessity. So you assert. On entirely rational grounds. Come on. Even the good professor acknowledged that his so-called proofs are really more like convincers. But that's what the word proof originally meant. The idea of an ironclad, unquestionable proof is a very modern idea, and it doesn't exist outside of logic and mathematics. Fair enough. Speaking of mathematics, would you mind if we go there briefly? At least we'll be able to agree when there's a mathematical proof. Sure. Why not? I like math. Incidentally, if you don't like math, do yourself a favor and don't ask people for proofs. You don't want to embarrass yourself. Seriously. Hey, so liking mathematics, you're probably familiar with Fermat's last theorem.
Fermat's last theorem. We're actually going to go there, but don't panic. I'll walk you through it, and it's easy to understand. The theorem is all about natural numbers, or positive integers, if you prefer. No zeros allowed. And this should look familiar. If you remember Pythagoras back in grade school, in the context of right-angled triangles, this equation holds when n equals 2. And there are a number of famous cases where the other numbers are also integers. For example, if x equals 3, its square is 9. If y equals 4, its square is 16. The sum of those is 25, which is the square of 5. That's all basic stuff. But Fermat was convinced toward the end of his life that you couldn't do this for n greater than 2. That is, no three positive integers can fit this equation for any value of n bigger than 2. And the important players in the story aren't just this 17th century French dude, Pierre de Fermat. It also includes this gentleman named Andrew Wiles, who's still alive.
Sure, it's very well known. Quite so. Are you familiar with his proof? Well, I understand that Andrew Wiles took almost a decade of work to come up with it, and that the proof is formalized in something over 120 pages. Very good. Do you suppose mathematicians ever used the theorem in the 3 centuries between Fermat and Wiles? Perhaps. I wouldn't know. Without a requirement to bear the burden of proof?
I suppose.
No matter. About Wiles' proof, I'll confess, its mathematics is way beyond me. Are you able to track it?
Not at all. Frankly, it's quite over my head. Why do you ask?
Here's the thing. This is a mathematical theorem that any intelligent child can understand, and it's so far over our heads that the proof requires 358 years to discover and 129 pages to explain.
So,
what makes you imagine that it's reasonable to insist that at the snap of your fingers, any Christian must provide a proof of a transcendent God who by definition is over our heads?
fair enough.
You see, Wiles claimed that the discovery of his proof required what he calls an indescribably beautiful revelation. Rather than a proof of God, maybe that's exactly what you need.